While this series may be entertaining, some of you may be asking yourselves, why bother digging all of this up? Why bother pointing out the specific esoteric beliefs about human origins that the Thule Society had? Why bother tracing that to Erich von Daniken and Zacharias Sitchin and the other modern propagators of this mythos? Why point out that the History Channel and Gaia propagate and profit from this myth? The answer is because all of this propaganda is not for fun. It's not casual. It's not even to make money. It is to create a new religion, a new form of spirituality. From there, a new society can be formed. You see, in order for a new religion to take root, there has to be a few things. 1, a new origin story or new belief about how humans began on this planet. And 2, a new or updated idea of who God is or who the gods are or how we relate to them. A new paradigm. The reason why the Mars origin myth is so heavily propagated is because it must become common knowledge. Even if people think it's baloney, people still need to know the narrative. It needs to be embedded in their mind. Why? Because one day, evidence may appear that validates this propaganda. And in the light of extraordinary discoveries, even the most seemingly bizarre theories can be proven true. Today, in this episode of In Plain Sight, we are going to examine exactly how this could happen, exactly how a new religion and new system of control on this planet could happen through this exact myth, through the Mars origin myth. And in this knowledge, as we discuss it here together today, let it be known that we remove power from it, that our awareness of this prevents it.
Okay, all right.
We have learned a great deal about the planet Mars.
Add it up.
Dr. Werner von Braun.
The first time I came across Mars was about 7 years ago. I used to get visions of it. For a long time, I thought it was a past or future version of the Earth. The human beings on Mars were the same, and they felt kind of like an extension of humans on Earth. I did not understand at the time that the life waves of the planets in our solar system flow back and forth or lead into one another. That our souls experience the planets in our solar system as an initiation or school. Thus, all planets are related to the Earth, and all humans in our solar system are different evolutions of the same human form. As a practicing psychic, I used to work with clients, and sometimes I would see their lives on Mars. It was always a post-apocalyptic scenario. The visions would include late-stage transhumanism, death of the planet, war, and empty metallic sadness. There was always this sense of impossibility, as though humanity on Mars had gone too far and technologically developed beyond their spiritual level. This imbalance trapped certain Martians in a timeline that was leading to complete degeneracy and death. I would sense streams of overlay between Mars and Earth, and of course other planets as well, as though there were a precise system of exchange between worlds, the karma of one planet spilling into the other. But more importantly, I sensed, or maybe remembered, an ideology. I remembered the ideology of the Martians. It always stuck with me. And then, in the last few years, Elon Musk surfaced and began pushing the colonization of Mars and other social engineering agendas like transhumanism and artificial intelligence. And thus, the Mars ideology began to rise on the Earth. It wasn't even subtle. And I began to realize that they're here, that we are them, and that they are us. But not in the way that those who propagate the Mars origin myth would have us believe. Martians are not Anunnaki gods, and alien gods did not create humanity. In reality, a much deeper cycle is repeating on Earth, a cosmic cycle, a cosmic karma, a recapitulation of a specific cycle and a theme that happened on Mars is happening now on the Earth. We are beginning to see a deeper spiritual cycle that will come to a head in a certain way. We must recognize what is occurring and overcome this karmic cycle. But I am not the only one to know about the Martians on the Earth and the Martian connection to the Earth. This secret, the Mars origin myth and its potential final reveal in society, has been carefully planned and propagated in the deepest corners of certain elite secret societies. And there are other people who know about it as well.
As I mentioned recently, ladies and gentlemen, after reviewing data from one of the Mars rovers, NASA, big press conference the other day, concluded that Mars was once drenched with enough water to support life in a good, habitable environment. And this is an incredible discovery, and NASA still had to go out there and say that there's no proof that life existed. All they said was that conditions were there for there to be life. But this is not all NASA said, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot that is not being discussed here. As a powerful, influential member of the media, I know more than you do, especially about this. I have seen a highly classified report that has not been released publicly, and it probably won't be unless you consider my talking about it here to be releasing it publicly. It's top secret report, codenamed the Gore Report. It was prepared by scientists from Area 52 in New Mexico. They analyzed the Mars data. And there are some findings in this report, and I can understand why they don't want to release this, but I want to, and I don't know it all, but I want to pass off what some of the Gore report says. There was life on Mars. That's what NASA is not being upfront about. There was life up there. Everybody knows it. We can't be the only people occupying the universe. It's impossible. Who do we think we are? We're the only people God created? Sorry, for those of you who don't believe in God, only people who evolved from apes? So it's clear that there was life elsewhere, and now that NASA's kind of let the cat out of the bag, if there were habitable conditions up there, we know there was life there. In fact, they found some DNA evidence up there that compares favorably to members of the Skull and Bones Society here on Earth. These people were highly industrialized, the Martians. They were technologically superior, and they were very arrogant people. And they thought that the power and the force of their existence was all that was needed to sustain them. And they didn't care a whit about conservation. They didn't care a whit about preserving anything. They got rid of everything that was pristine. In fact, they used the internal combustion engine. They were globalists. They got rid of all the countries on that planet, and they had just one giant society, and the powerful, rich just absorbed everything they needed from the best parts of the planet, used it for themselves, and everybody basically suffered until everybody died out, because what happened was there were no checks and balances. Probably, I don't know this, there probably wasn't any campaign finance reform to restrict the corruption in their elective circumstances there. And so special interest groups and multinationals who escape taxes by forming offshore accounts. There's no coincidence in the fact that they found water, lots of water, where the habitable conditions were, because it dovetails with what's in the report about some of these multinationals abandoning their own countries and locating offshore for all of the nefarious reasons. They had rainforests. You're not hearing about this. They had ancient rainforests. They had jungles. They had so much oil and gas. They had reserves out the wazoo. In fact, one of the things they found on Mars is that there are still, it's possible that there's still some there, tiny little amounts. But it's clear. I mean, you saw the pictures from Mars. I saw the skeletons. At least I saw the fossils of the skeletons. There were people there, or there were beings there. But it looked like Pompeii. It looked like these people all died huddled together, and they were just swarmed in an instant. They were one day there and then gone. So many people living close together, it has to have been the result of urban sprawl. Nobody had any space. Nobody had any room, and you could tell it. I saw it from the pictures that they released. It's clear, ladies and gentlemen, Mars was once it was once the jewel of the solar system, and it was raped. Mars was raped. This is what NASA knows. This is what the Gore report says. Mars was raped by robber barons. Capitalism, dependence on combustible engines led to global warming. The ecosystem that sustained everybody was destroyed. That's why the water they found is at the equator area. The ice caps melted. Exactly what's happening here, folks. Exactly what's happening here. These people were advanced. Not everybody on Mars died. This is what's fascinating about this report. Not everybody on Mars died. Some were able to flee. Some were able to get off the planet. This is what they can't afford to release. UFOs, yep. All these sightings, all of these blinking lights, all these unexplained things, they're real. That's why they're calling this Area 52. Those are Martians escaping the destruction. I think it goes way back, before we were alive. These UFOs have been happening all over. It may well be that the bright star that guided the three wise men was a UFO. Tax cuts absolutely were a factor. That's what the offshore thing was all about. Yeah, of course tax cuts were a factor. But the elites got off. The elites were able to travel in space. The elite, there weren't very many of them, but they were able to get off. They fled the planet in time. The stunning thing about the Mars report, the Gore report, is that they're here. These people that destroyed Mars are here. They are on Earth, folks. They are in America. They work at Halliburton. They worked at Enron. They worked at WorldCom. They're at Boeing. They came to America, my friends. And the Gore report clearly illustrates they have not learned a thing from their experiences on Mars. The truth is out there. Far, far out there.
That audio clip of Rush Limbaugh is from March 4th, 2004, and caused quite a stir in the ufology community at the time. In that clip, he claims that he had access to a top secret file called the Gore Report. The Gore report revealed that Mars was once full of life, inhabited by human beings, and highly technologically advanced. He goes into strange detail about the reasons why the civilization failed and the careless and tyrannical attitudes of its leadership. Throughout the segment, obvious parallels are drawn between our Earth and Mars. Perhaps the most shocking element is that he claimed that NASA had discovered human bodies that were preserved and petrified like the bodies we see at Pompeii. He goes even further to say that the genetics of those bodies are connected to certain bloodlines on the Earth, and that a group of Martians were able to escape the death of their planet by coming to the Earth in advanced spacecrafts. The audience found the clip cryptic and rather out of character for the host. It probably would have faded into the background and been forgotten, except for that its credibility seemed to only increase, as within a few days, the show was removed from his archive entirely. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. So, how will all this come to a head? Where is this leading? What is the end game of this massive propaganda campaign? How will a new religion and political structure take root? The potential last stage of this propaganda campaign goes like this. Humanity begins to go to Mars and finds megalithic structures, temples, pyramids, human faces, and even human bodies petrified or preserved in some way. This may happen on Mars or the Moon or both. This will be done through official means. Famous scientists will participate. Humanity will be fascinated and enthralled with the idea that there is more to us than meets the eye. The incredible discoveries will be a welcome distraction from the political turmoil and constant division that has now become the norm for us on Earth. Genetic evidence will be extracted from whatever is found. Archaeological sites similar to the pyramids and temple complexes on Earth will also be uncovered. An exciting time of cosmic discovery will begin. Many people will feel it is an opportunity to reset and begin again. With all these alleged findings, we will have no choice but to begin to redefine who we are. All structures of society will come under intense speculation. Religions will have to respond to these finds and redefine their doctrines. Politicians and the government will also have to reveal what they know. Humanity, of course, has no choice but to accept that there was a civilization on Mars, and perhaps even our moon or other moons. This has already been heavily propagated by various groups since the 70s, and it's hanging out in our mind and pop culture as a kind of unvalidated speculation. Of course, there are major problems with this scenario. First of all, the average person cannot check these results or be personally involved in this redefinition of our existence. Only those that are within the scientific and spiritual elite can participate in these discoveries. The other issue is that the majority of people on the planet are not educated in esoterica to the point that these discoveries can be understood in a holistic, meaningful way. The truth is that there was a civilization on Mars, and this was known to our ancestors and was recorded in the mystery schools very clearly and much more completely. But, of course, the esoteric teachings around this will be overshadowed by the glamour and distraction of scientific findings. Thus, many people will not fully understand what this discovery is really about and where it's really leading. Many researchers that have propagated the Mars origin myth will feel validated and become the leaders and experts in the field. After all, they were trying to tell humanity for decades. After a pandemic, war, isolation, confusion, and trauma, humanity will perhaps even welcome this kind of finding, if only for its potential relief and distraction from earthly dramas. Desperate to feel a sense of community and belonging, discovering that there is a greater cosmic story or race will be exactly what is needed. All of the conflicts on Earth that have torn us apart in the 2020s will suddenly dissolve in presence of a new spiritual and social paradigm.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
A manned mission to Mars? An ambitious objective, and with the success of the Mars probes and NASA's rover, one that humanity has made substantial strides toward achieving. Could there have been a space base on Mars in antiquity?
If we had physical, tangible evidence of artifacts on Mars, we are not only not alone in the universe, but someone has been on the next planet over. That in itself will forever change our frame of reference.
Down, Eagle. The Eagle has landed.
Astronauts who land like eagles. Zecharia Sitchin's research reveals that in our ancient past there were advanced beings referred to as the Anunnaki, translated, those who from heaven to earth came.
The idea that there was in our solar system a race of intelligent beings far older than us who are now gone would certainly force us to rethink lots of questions, including the question of human origin, human origins. Where did we come from? Could we be the products of genetic engineering?
I was just so alarmed with the idea of nuclear war and the presence of the Cold War around me that when I kind of went on Christmas break, I couldn't really relax. I remember hearing the song, "O Little Town of Bethlehem," and thinking, well, Herod's troops arrived right after, little town of Bethlehem where Jesus was born. And I found myself obsessed with death thoughts. And then on the day after Christmas, I saw coverage of this face on Mars that had been found in a place called Cydonia Mensa on Mars. And it was a PM magazine kind of special, always is interesting, on the day after Christmas. And it showed that they had two very good pictures of this object at two different lighting conditions. And I was just astonished because I had expected when I heard about this that this was going to be a eggplant that looked like Richard Nixon or something like this, something. And my smile had vanished as soon as I saw the thing. And I remember putting my little daughter to bed with a bedtime story, and suddenly I found myself full of hope that perhaps a big discovery like this, that there had been a dead civilization on Mars, would end the Cold War. And the Russians and the United States, we would both go to Mars, not go to war. Instead of going to war, we would go to Mars together and investigate. And the Russians and the United States, we would both go to Mars, not go to war. Instead of going to war, we would go to Mars together and investigate. And I was suddenly full of hope. I could see a mental pathway out of this kind of Mexican standoff we'd become involved in.
People who are religious will have a difficult time refuting the science, even if they sense there is a manipulation happening. This is because science has become a religion in its own right. And the esoteric community has been hypnotized by the ancient alien narrative to such a degree that they will feel that these discoveries on Mars actually validate them, For the first time, they can sit down amongst family and friends and not be the black sheep. Finds on Mars will be proof that they were right about aliens and all of their strange beliefs. However, another group who has deeper understanding of the cosmos and the human being will not agree with what occurs and will directly push against it. Then, as if things weren't exciting enough, an even greater discovery will be made. It will be discovered that the structures on Mars are more than just that of a fallen civilization. No, they actually tell a story. The story of humanity, the story of human beings in the cosmos. Their origins. That's right. The structures on Mars were deliberately created to communicate the history of humanity. It will be said that Mars is the Rosetta Stone of the cosmos, the Rosetta Stone of human history. Of course, within this great reveal, the alien progenitor gods name themselves as the creators and as the gods of humanity. And who is making these discoveries? Who is going into space and finding bodies and messages from the gods of humanity? As you can imagine, astronauts that are most likely Freemasons will do this venturing. The scientists and other professions will also be carefully selected. This will not be an opportunity for just anyone. Behind it all is the thread of the initial Mars origin myth. The esoteric beliefs of the Thule Society, the secret occult groups that publicly manifested in Germany. NASA was practically created by Nazi scientists, and if that weren't enough, many of its missions happen in direct astrological alignments. The Curiosity rover landed on Mars on August 6th. In esoteric circles, this date is known as the Lion's Gate portal, or the Transfiguration of Christ. That date is also the anniversary of the atomic bomb's detonation on Hiroshima. You see, NASA operates ceremonially, ritually. Planets and stars are the basics of all occult practice. Not to mention that Jack Parsons, the famed rocket scientist and progenitor of NASA, tried to incarnate the goddess of Babylon and ceremonially launch rockets to honor the pagan goat god Pan, a variation of Baphomet. You cannot get a more publicly occult organization than NASA. Now, the final move. Once the genetics of these mummified Martians has been gathered, it will immediately be sequenced and compared to the genetics on Earth. And what do you know? The genes just happen to match the aristocratic families that have been pushing this Mars origin narrative all along. The families that have been pushing globalization and behind corruption all along. The gods of Atlantis, Sumer, and space are now revealed. Well, their ancestors anyway. Suddenly, the social paradigm on Earth shifts. Some people are more related to the gods than others. I'm sure you can imagine all the different ways this situation could change our world. In fact, I would love to hear them in the comments section. How exactly do you think this scenario could affect humanity? What other things could arise from this happening politically, socially, and spiritually? What can we do to shift this potential future timeline into a higher outcome? You also may be asking yourself how I know all of this, and if I saw this in some great and deep mystical vision. No. I read it in a magazine. While I have received certain impressions about Mars, it was really the January 2010 version of Fate magazine where the picture began to come clear. The article is the typical propaganda piece. It regurgitates the exact origin myth of the Thule Society, claiming that the progenitors of humanity lived on Mars before they came to the Earth. As expected, Sitchin's work is cited as the evidence for this, and the article goes to great lengths to link the Voyager photos to Quetzalcoatl and various sites in Mesoamerica. But it was the last paragraph of the article where everything clicked, where the end game was revealed. It said, "While digesting all of this, there still remains a question as to why and when these Martian geoglyphs were built. The when may remain a mystery for some time, until we go to Mars, and perhaps the construction of these geoglyphs may reveal a timeline that ticks in a lot sooner than one would think. The why may be answered by following Sitchin's accounts of Ningishizda, which provides plausible evidence that these geoglyphic structures found throughout Mars are the result of a blasphemous act by Ningishizda, who, with the aid of the IG, secretly recorded the sacred history of man across the surface of Mars. Just as Sitchin suggests in The Lost Book of Enki, the face on Mars was constructed as a memorial to the great Anunnaki leader, Alalu. The entire red planet may be viewed as an enormous clay tablet encoded with an analog to the sacred knowledge of Mesoamerica. The same knowledge bestowed to the Olmec by Ningishizda was eventually recorded in the lost book of the Maya, known as the Popol Vuh. Yes, you heard that right. Mars is the Rosetta Stone for humanity because the Anunnaki Martian gods recorded the, quote, sacred history of man across the surface, so that one day man could reach the red planet and know their true origins and place in the cosmos. Mars is actually a, quote, enormous clay tablet enclosed with an analog to the sacred knowledge of Mesoamerica. Face on Mars is actually also an Anunnaki god, of course, the same lineage as the various gods of the earth. Basically, according to this ideology, all we have to do is land on Mars, and we will discover our true origins. It's all conveniently written there. There's no need to remember it. There's no need to develop any kind of perception. All conveniently written there by the gods who created us. So, what is really going on with this planet to visit Mars, colonize Mars? Is there something more going on? Is it really a plan to rewrite our origin stories and maybe even restructure society through findings on Mars? If so, why would it be in plain sight like this? Well, because part of a black magic rite is to tell us exactly what they are going to do before they do it. It is an act of dominance. If they tell us what they're going to do, and we don't catch it and correct it, then we deserve it. That is the Martian ideology. Might is right. Survival of the fittest. Do as thou will. That is why it is important to depotentiate such displays. You don't need to be a psychic to notice patterns and connect dots. It's all right in front of us. All that you need is a willingness to think outside the box and challenge any beliefs that you have that may not truly be beneficial to you. This plan was set in motion long ago. It is a threat to our genuine process of awakening, and once we understand that this timeline could manifest, it is our responsibility to prevent it from having a detrimental impact on humanity. Will certain groups rise to discover an ancient civilization on Mars and even the many moons of our solar system? I don't know for sure. All I know is that there's an awful lot of material and effort by certain groups to suggest that this could very well be the case. It is certainly enough of a concern for me to spend the time writing this series. Now, what you do with this information is up to you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy my material, please consider keeping it alive by making a donation or becoming a premium member on my website. My website has forums where this topic and topics like this are being explored in greater detail. And I also do over 7 hours of private Q&A sessions where I just focus on my members' questions. I will see you in our next episode.